Do zero mobility metas suck in Fortnite, in particular for tournaments? Now, for casuals and for ranked, having mobility items where you can fly and fight and chase each other, hella fun. We already know that already. But for tournaments, mobility items can be kind of unskillful if they're too powerful. Like, I'd say this about most shockwave, every time I talk about mobility items, I talk about the shockwave hammer. But again, it could just right click, get you out of like a build, put you out of a bad position and get you into like a much better position, kind of free with no risk. So a lot of players didn't really have to think that much about their rotations and their positions because they just have a get out of jail free card where they can essentially just rotate regardless of how bad they've moved themselves. However, you know, we're seeing a lot of complaints right now, in particular from Queasy. I felt like every single time I either do a recent extra video or a recent video, it's always a Queasy tweet that I want to talk about. So if you're another pro, make some tweets so I can talk about some other people's comments as well. But yeah, he made a tweet, which I'll show in a second, which is basically like, how am I meant to rotate this? Obviously, kind of alluding to the fact that zero mobility metas are very difficult. So I'll play that now.
I genuinely don't know what can we do. Like, how does our IGL? Okay, I'm making a Twitter clip, bro. Like, how can best IGL in the world explain to me how do we rotate this, please? Besides fizzing and praying. Please explain to me. Please, please, please explain to me.
All right, so what I've done is I've actually jumped into that game just to kind of prove a little point here. So as you can see in the bottom right corner here, he is in the cluster of players with everyone else down there. Like, you know, it's not a good looking time. Max distance to rotate, tons of players over there. They're going to all basically have to make that same rotation at the same time. It's going to be a tough one to make. So from that position, if I fly the camera out, you'll be able to see. So essentially they are here. And they have to make a rotation over to a zone that's very generous of where that zone would be, but it's essentially in this area over here. And of course, the massive problem you have is all of these players will spray you. You've got these guys, who, by the way, won the game. I'll come back to later. In this position, who can hold you. These guys who can hold you. Everyone's already in position to hold you. So without any mobility items, this is an incredibly difficult rotation to make. Now, if you just watch that base tweet, you can watch that and say, yeah, I agree. How are we ever meant to rotate into those kind of positions? However, I'm not going to completely take the blame off of Queasy and Thomas in this exact situation because in my eyes, this position that they're in here was pretty preventable. Yeah, so let's just skip back and I'll take a look at where the zone's pulled here. All right, so this is not a dig at Queasy by any means, just for tweeting this, because he's in a shit position. Like, it's awful. You're basically not going to do well in this rotation, but it's something that is really important to learn, and it's something that a lot of players will have kind of forgotten about, purely based on the fact that they've had mobility items for so long, and it's like they get out of the groove of making these kind of rotations, right? So this is the zone that we're in. You're trying to rotate into the 8th zone. This is the 7th zone here. But let's rewind and see how they even got into this position to start with, right? So so starting from the 5th zone here, you can see if the next zone, which is the 6th zone, pulls to this side, you can already make a very, very educated guess that over here will be the majority of players. That's just always the way that zone rotations are going to work, right? And let's go here. Skip forward. And there you go. So when that next zone appears, you can see, oh my god, I'm a time traveler. I figured it all out. This is where the vast majority of players are. Now, if you're a good IGL, not a dig at Queasy again, he is one of the best IGLs in the world. I'm just making a point. You again can then read the zones and make the assumption that if the majority of players are down here, they're probably going to rotate here. So this area, the next zone, is going to be heavily congested. And if we skip ahead, whoa, no way, that's what happens, right? So, and in this particular zone as well, if you're reading ahead, you can even see just based on this map, there is a hill here as well. So that's going to make things even worse because so many players are going to ramp up on top of it and sit up on top of the hill. I also should add, these zones slightly don't match the ones in game, just based on where the edges, but still, that's not the point. So the next question you may ask is, where in this zone here are Queasy and Thomas? Well, I have that information for you. In what is probably the best position, or one of the best positions, in the zone already, because remember, if you look at what I just said before, sorry, zooming out on maps is a real pain here, all of these players end up on this line, and Queasy and Thomas are already over here. I don't know why is this going so fat? Hold on. So yeah, Queasy and Thomas are here, whereas all these other players are going to rotate onto this side, so they're actually in a great position already. All right, with 1 second to go before that next zone appears, remember again, they're in this position here. Let's try to zoom out just so you can see. All the players are on this side of the zone. They have 500 above the storm surge, which means they don't need to go into the congested side to get any damage. And now in their mind, you press play and the zone now pulls up to the north. So basically, from their position here, they have two different ways that they can go. Maybe three. Is this open still? Yeah, I mean, you don't want to run through there. But anyway, potentially three ways to go if you go that way. You can either go along this way towards where the congested players are, or, hint, you can go behind and wrap all the way around. Now, what that would end up doing was, if you look at this zone here, means that all of these players, as we know, are going to end on this edge in the congestion because of that hill that's there. So everyone is rotating to here. Whereas these, 4 players over this side, on that right side, are probably going to end up around this point of the zone, which is away from the congestion. So for Queasy and Thomas here, had they gone out the back and then rotated dead sides, which again, if the zones had been read beforehand, you could easily do, you can get away from what would be probably very predicted congestion along here. But as we can see, that is indeed not the play they make, as they ran directly into what would be the congestion instead. Now, they make a good rotation. They stagger. They don't lose too much damage. They use their fizz when needed. But ultimately, the bad rotation and the difficult rotation was because they set themselves into a poor position already. As you can see, everyone else rotating in. If you look at the map in the bottom right, just as we skip forward here. And yeah, just as the zone's about to close. Boom. So, again, now remember, from this position, let me zoom out so that's not there. They were down here. Had they rotated this way, they would have been fine. And then if the zone, say, had pulled any other direction, say it had pulled up here, much easier rotate to make because they keep themselves away from the dead side. If it pulls down here, okay, yeah, that's going to be a tough rotate to make, absolutely. But any other rotation is easier from this position over here, or if they'd gone over to where these guys are, or maybe even gone further into the dead side around here. All of those are easier rotations to make than landing in where you are congested and having to rotate with everyone at the same time. So in my eyes, when it comes to zero mobility metas, looking at zones and saying, how do I rotate this because it's so different, I'm in such a bad spot and with all the congestion, like the problems usually start way earlier in you getting to that bad position rather than it just being a bad zone pool. Obviously, sometimes, look, I'm not trying to say every rotation is possible. I'm not trying to say that you're just not going to get bad RNG when it comes to like a zero mobility metas. But by being proactive, you can cut out the chances of these happening massively. For fun, let's see how they actually did end up rotating this, because I'm quite interested now. I can see, I mean, obviously doing a good job of scouting to see where they're going to go and when, and nobody's rotating. So like literally not a single player is moving here. Which means it's difficult for them. I don't know what I would do. I mean, I don't know what I would do in this situation. Maybe pre-tarp out a little bit so you can get a bit better vision at least. Maybe start to go... I'd probably go to the left. They just go for the classic... Yeah, I think... Yeah, they've started to go more left. That's good. I feel like had they gone left maybe a little earlier... Well, I was going to say if they'd gone left earlier, they would have been just shot in the back. So it's like... It's already really difficult. Taking a good path. Sure, shooting someone in the back. They ended up making like a good rotation out of this. Like they get a kill. I'm just spoiling. Thomas does die, so they get a kill out of this. Thomas is weak. Splash up. How many mats? Tons of like cat mats. Fizz. Now's the point I think where you commit mats into this. There's another body. What the hell? How does Thomas die? I see that's on him this time. The thing is, like, even though they had a bad situation, they actually still made a really good rotation. So, like, the tweet's kind of funny anyway. Like, the only reason they died is because Thomas got boxed in this particular one, which I think is quite funny. Yeah, and I think the main reminder I want to make is the fact that a lot of the complaints I'm seeing about zero mobility metas are the fact that players are not making good rotations in the 2 or 3 zones prior in order to put themselves into a spot to give themselves better zone RG and good rotations. And one of the reasons I kind of like zero mobility metas is honestly because it rewards the players who are very active about their positioning in those mid games, and it allows you to be set up for the end game in a really nice way. Do I believe that it should be in every single season? No, probably not. In particular, if it's in duos, and if it's solos with zero mobility meta, God help me, it's painful sometimes trying to rotate when players in front of you don't spray. But yeah, let me know what you think. Should we have more zero mobility metas? Probably not.